Hello, everybody. It is your Congressman Jamie Raskin from Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District coming to you to welcome you to our 2023 Tax Season Resources and IRS Info session. I'm joined by Veronica Tubman, who's the Senior Stakeholder Liaison at the IRS, Wendy Figueroa, who is Maryland's Acting Local Taxpayer Advocate, and my sensational staffer, Erica Fuentes, who will be moderating the conversation for us and who does a lot of the IRS work for me in our district office. The 2023 tax season officially began January 23rd, and most taxpayers have until Tuesday, April 18 to submit their 2022 returns and to pay their taxes. Taxpayers who cannot file in time may request an extension, but you got to do that before the April 18 deadline. But they should know that an extension to file is not an extension to pay taxes. The IRS recommends that owed taxes be paid on time to avoid any potential financial penalties and interest. Before we start, I want to share an exciting overview of some new tax credits that your family may qualify for thanks to our adoption of the Inflation Reduction Act in 2000 and in the 117th Congress. Starting in 2023, families can qualify for a tax credit of up to $7,500 to buy a new electric vehicle, which can help you save thousands of dollars on fuel costs over the life of your car. Electric vehicles tend to have lower maintenance costs because they have fewer moving parts and they do not require oil changes. Separately, under the Residential Clean Energy Tax Credit, families can qualify for a tax credit to cover 30% of the costs of installing clean energy systems like rooftop solar panels, wind, or geothermal. There are no income restrictions for this tax credit, and there's no cap on total savings. Families that want to make home repairs or upgrade old appliances can qualify for the Energy Efficient Home Improvement Tax Credit. You can claim up to $1,200 per tax year for adding home insulation or installing efficient windows, skylights, doors. You can also claim up to $2,000 for electric heat pumps that warm and cool homes more efficiently. So all these are different ways that we adopted plans to create tax savings for you when you invest in renewable energy and insulation expenses. For a list of Inflation Reduction Act tax credits, for a complete list, check out the handy IRA savings calculator from Rewiring America. And you can enter your family's information to find out which tax credits you may qualify for and estimated savings that you could get. That's rewiringamerica.org. Rewiringamerica.org. Last year was one of the most challenging years yet for taxpayers. Our office helped hundreds of constituents who encountered truly unacceptable and painful delays with their returns. Longstanding funding shortages and understaffing at the IRS contributed to these delays. The agency's budget from 2010 to 2022 was slashed by 20%. Even as the number of individual tax returns for the IRS to process increased by 20%. So returns went up, but staffing went down. And that's what all of you guys were experiencing. And that's what we were experiencing as we were trying to get the agency focused on getting people, getting their tax returns done and getting them their tax refunds. The agency operated on a workforce that was about the same size, if you can believe this, in 1970. So I'm hopeful that better days are ahead of us. I'm delighted to share that the Inflation Reduction Act we passed last year provided a lot of badly needed resources for the IRS to hire 5,000 new customer service staff to answer your questions, address the backlog, modernize technology, and just generally rebuild public trust in the agency. I want to note that Secretary of Treasury Yellen has directed the IRS not to use any new funding to increase audits on taxpayers who earn less than $400,000 per year. So anything that you hear about how that money's going for tax auditors for middle-class people is just propaganda and disinformation. President Biden's nominee for IRS commissioner has also promised not to increase audits on middle-class taxpayers and instead will prioritize improving customer service, which is what all of us have been talking about. My staff and I are closely tracking this year's tax season progress because everybody deserves a headache-free tax filing experience. Each year, Americans spend about 11 hours and more than $200 preparing their taxes, and we want to simplify that process as much as possible. I support the Tax Filing Simplification Act legislation that will provide most Americans who have simple tax situations with a tax return that is already prepared by the IRS. And I learned that's how they do it in 36 different countries. That's how they do it in England. That's how they do it in Germany and Japan. They prepare it for you. Most people have very, very simple taxes. The tax authorities calculate your liability, and then you have a chance to review and pay the taxes owed. I also support allowing the IRS to develop a free online tax prep service available to all taxpayers. Currently, taxpayers making under $73,000 can take advantage of the IRS free file program, which allows you to file your taxes online at no cost. My staff and I are here to help you. We are always happy to answer any tax-related questions. You can reach us at 301-345-1000. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Erica. Let me quickly introduce our very special guests before I hand it over to Erica, and I want to thank you all for coming. I know we got a big crowd of constituents there. To begin with, Wendy Figueroa is the Acting Local Taxpayer Advocate for Maryland since July 2022. She served as the Local Taxpayer Advocate in another office for the last 3 years before coming to Maryland. She has 21 years experience with IRS and has provided services both to individuals and people in many different capacities. She joined the Taxpayer Advocate Service 15 years ago because she's passionate about this cause and about advocacy and protecting your rights and educating taxpayers in our region. She finds it very rewarding to know that she's making a difference in your lives and your ability to get your taxes done. Veronica Tubman works for the IRS in the Communications and Liaison Division as a senior stakeholder liaison. She focuses on education and outreach to small business owners, community groups, self-employed individuals, practitioners, payroll preparers, tax professionals, other groups, and state and local, as well as federal agencies through Maryland. She maintains open lines of communications with all our partners. She started in 1984 and has served in many different capacities, and she remains thankful for another opportunity to help serve our people. I am so grateful to both Wendy and Veronica, and I'm going to turn it over to Erica at this point, and I thank you all for being part of this great session.
So just to give a quick overview of how today's event will go for our attendees, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Veronica and Wendy, who will go through their prepared presentations. And then at the end of today's event, we'll have about 15 minutes of Q&A. And I just want to thank everyone who went ahead and registered for today's event and submitted questions ahead of time. We've gone ahead and selected a few of those questions, and we'll be answering it at the end of today's event.
Thank you so very, very much. And a good afternoon to you all again. Thank you so very much. My name is Veronica Tubman, and I am with the Stakeholder Liaison Division of the Internal Revenue Service. And again, I have the pleasure of serving our taxpayers in the state of Maryland. I have been with the service for 38 years. I started in 1984. And again, it is a pleasure. So what we are going to do is take an opportunity to discuss some of the 2022 filing season updates with you. And as we move along, let's take a look at publication 5349. This is our year-round tax planning for everybody. And what I did, I took a screenshot from irs.gov for everybody to take a look at. Just remember, whenever you look at information on irs.gov, just look in the lower left-hand corner and you will see the date that that particular web page has been updated. Just a few little helpful hints. To secure the information on the publication, just click right on in the upper right-hand corner. There is a search engine. You can put in a topic-specific question, or you can just put in a publication number. Just a little helpful hint from me to you. So here we are. This particular publication gives helpful hints to us, really assist you throughout the entire year. So taxes starts from the very beginning to the end of the year. You can check your tax withholdings, and we have a tax withholding calculator that you can use that will assist you in making a determination. Do I have enough withholding, or maybe I need to make a few estimated tax payments, or possibly increasing my withholding. So just remember, when you use the tax withholding calculator, we do not retain any of your information. So just as another helpful hint, as a reminder, organize your records as you go along. Also, the IRS has information available in a number of languages to reach out to all of our taxpayers. Everyone is important, and we are reaching out to all of you for proper tax administration. We have information and resources that are available in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Russian, Vietnamese, and Haitian Creole. And we know that life events affect your taxes. So just make sure that you keep in mind, if things change for you as the year goes along, maybe you have more than one job, then you will need to adjust your taxes to make sure that you have put in the adequate amount. And moving along, let's look at some current tax tips. So on our next screen, we have backup withholding, payment deadlines, common mistakes. So just take a double check and sometimes check again to make sure that the information that you've input is correct. You may have had the pleasure of adopting a child into your family. So we talk about adoption credits and tax tips for the gig economy. We're going to talk about that a little later. That's really important. And moreover, remember about those estimated tax payments that we talked about. So if you're required to make those payments, hopefully you made those on January 17th. That was the last for the current filing season. As in all things, we're going to take a discussion briefly on our next screen about your taxpayer bill of rights. It is so extremely important that you are fully aware that the IRS values you. There are certain taxpayer bill of rights that you are entitled to according to the law, and they are listed on your screen. You have the right to be informed. You have the right to quality service. Speaking of quality service, in the event that you have an opportunity to call into the service, make sure that you get the employee's name and the time of your call and the number that you are calling, just in case you may have some questions at a later date. We are required to provide you with quality service. I encourage you to make sure that you retain that information on each and every IRS call that you make. We talked about those important tax withholding requirements. Moreover, be on the lookout for any alerts on tax scams. If it looks too good, it's probably too good to be true. So we always say, when in doubt, make sure that you leave it out. On the screen that we see here, we're talking about information from our IRS newsroom and what's hot. The options are, we have something called e-news subscription. And if you subscribe to that as a small business owner or an individual or a practitioner, you will get most, if not all, of the most recent updates as soon as they happen. But don't worry if you don't subscribe, that information is available on irs.gov as well. And also, as we move along, we have so much more information. Don't avoid to file your information, or file it as soon as possible. Remember that timely filing is considered to be on the deadline for April of this year. However, if you secure an extension for filing, that is not an extension to pay. So if you think that you are going to owe and you're not sure, try to make sure that you get all of those payments in timely by the deadline so that you can avoid a failure to pay penalty. All right, let's talk about the other dependent credits, or our acronym, the ODC. We're going to take a look at our eligibility rules for a qualifying person. And Wendy is going to talk to us a little bit later about the earned income tax credit. And we're on the next slide. There we go. Thank you. I love technology. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Taxpayers with dependents who don't qualify for the child tax credit, you may be able to claim the child under the ODC. So remember, this is a non-refundable credit. It can be used to reduce or in some cases eliminate a tax bill that you may have. The IRS cannot refund the taxpayer any portion of the credit that may be left over. So just keep that in mind. A taxpayer can claim the ODC if they claim the person as a dependent. They cannot use the dependent to claim the child tax credit or any additional child tax credit. So let's just keep that in mind. The dependent is a U.S. citizen, national, or resident alien. And don't forget, a person not related to you or your client for preparers, but lives with them for the entire tax year. And then moving right along, we're looking at more information regarding the ODC, the qualifying relative eligibility rules. So remember, in order to be claimed, it's a dependent of any age, including children who are over the age of 18. And this chart just provides you with the dependency updates. They have to have a valid Social Security number. If not, then they have to have a taxpayer identification number or an individual tax identification number. So dependents, parents, or other qualifying relatives, they have to be supported by the taxpayer for the majority of that particular tax year, and that would have been for 2022. Also, it may be an unrelated dependent, someone that lives in your house all year long. They've been a member of your household and you have been providing the care. Little quick review. So just remember what a dependent is. A taxpayer must be able to claim this as a person as a dependent, and Wendy's going to assist us with that as well. The person's income must be below the exemption amount. And just remember, on irs.gov, we have great graphics to assist you with making that determination. Moving right along. So for some ODC common errors that you may run into, if the person has to have a valid Social Security number, the person doesn't meet the dependency requirements, and if the person doesn't meet the residency requirements, then they don't qualify. Moving right along and taking a look at how can I claim head of household? What makes me the head of household? So that is defined by the IRS is an unmarried taxpayer who has dependents and paid for more than half of the cost of keeping the home up for the entire year. And this tax filing status commonly is issued to single parents or divorced parents who are legally separated by the last day of the year. And they have to have custody of that particular dependent. And next, let's talk about something really important, our basic disclosure. The Internal Revenue Service provides a tax return information, and all of that information that you provide to us is confidential, except if it falls under the information that is stated on our screen. The code is 6103, and that would be the only disclosure is if it is authorized by Congress. We don't provide information to any other particular agency. So don't worry about that. Your information is kept in the strict of confidence. We want to make sure that you understand that. And on the next area, we talk about who we would share that information with. Certain federal officers for the purposes of tax administration, federal employees, has to be on a need-to-know basis, and disclosure of tax information to a tax preparer only. Let's take a look at our online accounts. And basically what an online account is, it's a self-service tool for individuals. You can securely look at your account information, and I'm going to walk you through that very briefly. The information provided on the next screen basically is a screenshot of what the online account looks like online. You can get your balance, any payments that you have made, or if there's any other litigation that has been taken against you. And moreover, now available, we have tax professional authorizations. They may want to look at the information if they're representing you on our next screen. You can create a short-term payment plan if you have a balance that is owed, and you can manage your preferences online. Some people choose not to have paper notices, and that is an option as well. And you can also make a secure payment. And let's take a look at understanding the gig economy. You know, as things change and online platforms have increased during COVID times, you know, individuals rent out a spare room. They may provide car riding or connect with other consumers to provide goods, services, or so many other things. And that's what we call the gig economy. And that's money earned through the gig economy. Those funds are taxable. So a gig economy is referred to an on-demand sharing or access for economy or purposes. We're talking about commuting, travel, rent, vacation places, and other things of that nature. And as in all things, you can refer right to irs.gov. We talked about that upper search engine box a little earlier, and you can put that information in to get more about gig economy. So next, we talked about what is the gig economy? What constitutes a gig economy worker? It could be an employee or a self-employed individual. And you got to make sure you maintain those business expenses and record keeping, because you are entitled to certain deductions related to the gig economy. There are rules that are identified for home rentals and tax payment options for our gig economy workers. And on the next screen, it's just a screenshot of what you will see with the gig economy. And then on our next slide, we're talking about those resources that we talked about on irs.gov, using that search key, that search engine, and also a publication 5369, Gig Economy and Your Taxes, Things That You Need to Know. We talked about the identification pin a little earlier, and this pin is to protect your federal account from any identity theft that may have occurred. So next, when we talk about an IP pin briefly, if you have been unfortunately the victim of ID theft, we assign you an IP pin, and that will protect you through the current tax year if you are the unfortunate victim of identity theft. Now, with an identity pin, you have to get a new identity pin each and every year. And unfortunately, if you have been the victim of identity theft, you will have to file a paper return until the issue is addressed, which hopefully will be fairly shortly. And remember, filing for an ID PIN, it's voluntary enrollment, and that helps protect you from any future fraud. And next, we just basically talk about on our next two screens, and on the next screen, talking about the online application, Form 15227, which is the application for the IP PIN, or you can just walk into our office. Wendy from the Taxpayer Assistance Office, they will be more than happy to assist you if you have an appointment, and you can have an in-person meeting to file that form with us as well. And so we are continuing to make sure that we maintain open communication lines with the IRS and other languages. If you make that appointment to come into the walk-in office or go to the Taxpayer Advocate's office, just let us know ahead of time. We'll make sure that we have employees available to speak in your language, if English is not your native language. And you can go right on irs.gov at www.irs.gov/help/languages, and make sure you keep that as in your favorites. We're improving services across the country, and we need your help to expand our multilingual initiatives and continue to communicate. You know, it is our commitment as we continue forward on our web pages to make sure that the information is available, as we discussed earlier, in the languages as stated. And for irs.gov on our next screen, little screenshot that will show you across the very top of all irs.gov screens, the languages that are available for this particular page. So you just go right ahead as a visitor on irs.gov, click on that language, and you can go ahead and complete your tax business. And also we have an interpreter service. So we're not only speaking of individuals that speak in different languages, but if you have some hearing, visual concerns, we have expansion over the phone interpreters. We have toll-free lines to help you along. And we have assisters that will provide you the information in English and Spanish. And that 1-800-829-1040 is our regular telephone number. But for those other languages, we need you to reach out to us at 833-553-9895. And we also have an earned income tax assistance tool. It's available in Spanish. And you simply would go right on here and it will walk you through. We talked about that earlier, that earned income tax credit assistant. Remember, any information you put in online, whether it's for withholding or it's for the earned income tax assistant, we do not retain your information. So what do you know? The IRS is up and running on social media. You know, our multilingual information is available on all sources of social media, and they're available in English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Russian, Korean, Haitian Creole. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So look out for those important messages and share with your family. And we would appreciate that. The information is also available on, we have IRS videos in case we had a seminar or webinar and your schedule would not allow you to meet with us. We do have that available as well. And next, we talked about our video portal. So you missed it. We have an IRS video portal available to you. And moreover, let's talk about understanding tax scams and abusive schemes. You know, you want to look out for any abusive transaction schemes or scams that may be produced for tax benefit, which is not allocated in the Internal Revenue Code. If someone calls you at home and asks you for personal information and you are not sure, you secure their information, you can always go on irs.gov and seek out stakeholder liaison. We are available in every state throughout the country. You give us a call and let us know, and we will be more than happy to verify if someone is posing as an IRS employee to assist you. So be very careful with those abusive transactions and schemes and things of that nature. And then next, it is our goal to eliminate this information. If you think you run across it, or if you're not sure, just check out publication 3995, Recognizing Illegal Tax Avoidance Schemes. And on our next slide, it just tells us what it looks like. There's a trifold available for you as for reference purposes. And lastly, we're going to talk about the very important topic of issue management resolution system. Now, our issue management resolution system next is a mechanism to take in your concerns you may have regarding IRS policies, practices, or procedures, or any systemic problems. There may be something that's not working well. We gladly want you to identify the information, and we can put this on our issue management resolution system. It may be something that's a problem throughout the country that we can assist you with. And next, what we do is we gather all your information. We put it on the system. And again, I said, maybe somebody has the same question in another area. And if you need that assistance as stated, we shared again that search engine in the upper right-hand corner on irs.gov. Just put in the keyword search stakeholder liaison, and someone from one of our offices will be more than happy to assist you. I'd like to thank you so much for your time, knowing that this will help you. If you're already not ready now, you are ready for our 2022 tax filing system. And once again, I thank you for another opportunity to serve taxpayers of Maryland. And I am going to turn it over to my associate at this time. Be well. Take care.
Thank you, Veronica, for such a wonderful presentation and so much information. I think that it's going to be great for all of you to know all this information. Let me just go ahead and try to share my presentation real quick. I am Wendy Figueroa, the Acting Local Taxpayer Advocate Service for the state of Maryland. And I wanted to talk to you because I know you're eager to file and you wanted to do a good job and you don't want to have any problems this year because as we know, we have been struggling with that for the past 2 years. So I'm just going to give you some tips now that you know a lot of the information about the credits and things to avoid, and how can you make your return be processed without any complications or any delays. And I'm going to start by talking about making sure that you use your W-2 when you're filing your tax return or the forms 1099, because a lot of people try to file their taxes as quick as possible and they use the pay stubs, and that creates a problem when the IRS are processing your return and you wanted to avoid a delay. So one of the main things that you have to do and make sure is that you review that form before you file your taxes. You wanted to make sure that the information, your social security number, the information of the income, the address, everything is correct. You should have the forms by now because the employers were supposed to be sending that by January 31st. So if you have not received it, or if you have any complications with the form, you wanted to contact first your employer or your payer and try to get that information corrected as soon as possible. But if you're not, for any reason, you're not able to get in touch with them, you can always contact the IRS. You can contact the 1-800-829-1040 number between Monday to Friday from 7 to 7 Eastern Standard Time for those in Maryland. And but you can also create an online account like Veronica had mentioned before. You can create an online account and be able to retrieve your forms, your wage and income information from your online account. And one of the reasons why this is critical is because the IRS have a department that ensures that the information is, oh, wait me 1 second, I'm sorry. Can't go back. So the IRS have a department that verifies the accuracy of your return. And they do this every year just to make sure that no refunds, fraudulent refunds are issued. And that's why it's so important that you verify your W-2 information and that everything matches, so to avoid any delays. This process is lengthy because it requires an IRS employees to be looking at your returns. Sometimes we have to contact the employer or the payer, and you wanted to make sure that this information is accurate. So double check the information on your return, that it is correct. Make sure that your social security numbers, your number, your dependent, and your spouse information match. Like Veronica had mentioned before, that is critical to get accurate returns and get the returns processed as soon as possible. You also want to make sure that the credits and deductions are listed on your return, that you are eligible for them. In addition to that, you know, you can get more information on the website. You can look at the credits and deductions for individual options on the website. And talking about some family related credits, Veronica have mentioned the other credits for dependent. I'm going to be talking briefly about the earned income tax credit. Veronica have talked about the EITC assistant tool that's available, and this tool will help you determine whether you are eligible for the credit, what kind of amount, tentative amount would you be entitled to, and it also helps you determine if your qualifying children are correct to claim then on the tax return. So you wanted to make sure that you look at your social security number and that there are valid numbers for employment for yourself and your dependents. One of the things that is critical as well is the filing status, because married filing separate is one of those status that will not make you eligible for this credit. So married filing jointly, head of household, or qualifying widower or single will be one of the filing status that you will need to in order to claim this credit. You must be a U.S. citizen or resident alien, and you cannot have the form 2555 or form 2555 EC to report for an earned income and claim the credit. And again, you have to make sure that you have qualifying children. Some of you may qualify without the child, and that's you can utilize this tool to determine that. And on the screen, you have some of the available tools in the IRS.gov, but you also can use the Taxpayer Advocate Service EITC Get Help page. Some of the requirements are listed on the screen, and because this is so important, 31 million taxpayers claimed the earned income tax credit last year. And we see errors all the time, and it's critical that you understand the requirements because there are consequences. Sometimes you could get audited, And if so, sometimes you will have to pay the credit back with interest and penalties. And in addition to that, there are consequences sometimes because you can get banned from filing and claiming this credit in the next 2 years. You will have to utilize the special forms to claim the credit, the form 8862. And if the IRS determined that there was fraudulent claim, that the credit was fraudulently claimed, then you could get banned for 10 years. And imagine that this is one of the most critical credits important for families. So make sure that you always look at these requirements. In the next slide, I'm going to talk briefly about some of the most common EITC errors, and of course, claiming a child that perhaps do not live with you or that is not related to you. And this is something that we talk about all the time, but we continue to see a lot of returns claimed with these errors. We wanted to ensure that you report your income or expenses correctly, and most of the errors that we see are particularly with the Schedule C. Sometimes it is because the filing status had been used incorrectly. If you're married, sometimes they claim the credit means single or head of household. So although there are some rules, special rules for taxpayers that are married and considered unmarried, I will encourage you to go to the tool and the IRS.gov to make sure that you claim the right credit, the right filing status, I'm sorry. And again, the name, Social Security numbers, that continue to be a big error. So make sure that you visit the IRS.gov. There's going to be a lot of information about individual errors. In the slide, you have the information there. And some other credits and deductions, Veronica have mentioned that, touched that during her presentation. So I'm going to go straight to the next slide, which is the premium tax credit. This is one of the most common errors that we see that cause the delay of the refund, because most of the taxpayers receive premium tax credit in advance, and they have to complete the form 8962. A lot of the time that form is not included with the tax return, causing a lot of delays, particularly because the IRS have to correspond with taxpayers to request that. So make sure that if you have insurance with the health insurance marketplace, that you receive the 1095A. If there's some errors, please contact them to get an updated form, and make sure that you utilize this form when you file your tax return, especially for this year. Because the credit has been expanded, so for the 400% of the poverty level, so we will still be required to complete the form 8962, but you may be qualified for the credit, which in the past last year that was expanded, and expanded for 2022 as well. So make sure that you attach all the required schedules and forms to your tax return. That is critical. Make sure that you look at the lines. If you have any entries on your form 1040, make sure that you look. If it says that you have to attach the form, it have to be included with the return to avoid delays. And make sure you file electronically, because that's the easiest way. Utilize direct deposit, direct pay, and make sure that you double check your figures if you're using a software that imports a prior year data automatically, because sometimes it could make a change of your income and create some errors for you. And if you do have to file in paper, make sure that you double check, because there have been a lot of updates to try to assist with the processing of the returns and the payments. So you wanted to go online and check exactly what address you have to mail your tax return, and make sure that you sign your paper return. Very important, because otherwise that will create a big delay with the IRS trying to get your signature. And that kind of concludes my presentation, but I wanted to make sure that you know that the Taxpayer Advocate Service Assistant is free, And that if you file your tax return and you try to resolve the issue and you're not successful, you can always contact us. We also have a tool in our website where you can, it will ask you a few questions to determine whether you qualify for an assistant, and it will give you instructions of what you need to do to get in touch with us. And again, like Veronica mentioned, some of our resources that we have, the Taxpayer Advocate Service also have some resources. You can follow us on the social media and also in our website, and follow the NTA blog and the news page to get more information. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Erica?
Thank you, Veronica and Wendy. Those were really informative presentations, and I know I learned a lot, so I hope that our constituents learned a lot also. So we have some time for some questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask the first one. So our first question is from Cherie in North Potomac. So she asked us, are there any first-time home buyer tax credits? What credits and how much can I claim for energy efficient home improvements? Veronica, I think you're still on mute.
Sorry, everybody. We know technology is great, but sometimes it gets us. Okay, Sherry. So for our first-time homeowners account, there is a lookup option on IRS.gov. It will help to determine your eligibility. It'll gather, make sure you get all your information and check your account. And the number to get more information, you can talk to a customer service representative. It's 800-919-0352.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have a question from Paula in Silver Spring. She asked, can I deduct heating and internet expenses if I work from home? If so, how? Are there any other related homeowner credits? Thank you.
Okay, Wendy, I can take that one. So go ahead, Wendy.
No, you can go ahead and take that one. I'm having a little bit of problems.
Yeah, the gremlins are loose, but we are determined because we are on a mission, so don't worry. So for publication 587, business use of the home, it provides you with income on figuring and claiming the deductions you working in your home. So the two options are actual expense and the simplified method. So actual expense, you're going to divide your expenses by the operating cost between your personal and your home use. And then it qualifies by the percentage of the home that you use. So just make sure you go on irs.gov and access publication 587, business use of the home, for more details.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have a question from Flora in Chevy Chase. She asks, we can e-file Maryland state taxes for free. Why doesn't the IRS let everyone do that instead of having us pay the quote partners to e-file?
Okay, I'll grab that one too. So you can file your federal income tax return for free using tax preparation and for filing right online. You have to pay a preparer because they have skills to help to prepare your returns to make sure that they're accurate and that they are filed timely. And that's where the fee comes in. That the IRS does not file. We don't charge you a fee for filing your tax return. Erica, back to you.
Thank you. Next up, we have a question from Michael in DC, actually. He asked, what steps are TAS and the IRS taking to better understand the taxpayer experience and use this data to inform process improvement?
Eric, I'll take that. Well, first of all, the Taxpayer Advocate Service and the IRS are working together and collaborating. I would refer Michael to the publication 5426, which is the Taxpayer First report to Congress, because there's information there and all the things that IRS has made to implement, you know, after the Taxpayer First Act was enacted. And also, you know, there's information about the experience, the training, organization redesign strategies and things like that. But we also have the annual report to Congress that was released in January by the National Taxpayer Advocate Service. And you will have the purple book too, and there's a lot of legislative recommendations. There's a lot of studies and information about everything that TAS is doing and recommending to the IRS and changes to make the experience better for all taxpayers.
Great, thank you. So we're going to jump ahead to James's question from Silver Spring. So his question is, I have income in the US and my wife is employed in Ireland. Joint return or married filing separately?
I'll take that one, Erica.
Thank you.
Sure. So our publication 54 with James, it's a tax guide for US citizens and resident aliens. And that's going to give you a lot of information. There are some tests that are required to see if you qualify for that credit. So we recommend that you take a look at publication 54.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Albert's question from Tacoma Park. He asked, how do I find out why the IRS shorted me on my 2020 refund?
Okay. Wendy, you want me to?
Yeah, I can take that one.
Thank you.
Well, if there was a shortage on the refund, I would say most likely the IRS will have sent a letter notifying of the error, the math error. If it's related to an offset, most likely there's also a notice that comes to inform what happened with, you know, the refund, a partial refund, offset. But most of the questions can be answered by calling the IRS toll-free line. And the number is the 1-800-829-1040. It's available Monday to Friday from 7 to 7 Eastern Standard Time. That's where they, you know, they can provide that information by asking the questions and going in there and if for any reason no letter or correspondence was received.
Great, thank you. I believe we have time for a couple more questions. So I'm going to jump ahead to, I believe her name is pronounced Hillary from Silver Spring. So she asked, how can I receive a forgiveness for not filing my taxes while battling cancer in the hospital overseas?
Okay.
So tax forgiveness.
Okay, I will answer that for you. So removal or reduction of any penalty, that can only be done if you've acted in good faith to try to show reasonable cause of why you did not file a return and you've represented that. And you just have to make sure under the law, we cannot remove or reduce any interest or penalty without the proper information. So the burden of proof is going to fall on you. So just go on irs.gov and look under penalty relief. And if the reasonable cause is there, we will adjust the penalty accordingly. And then the interest will be based upon the facts and the circumstances of your situation.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have a question from Jill in Silver Spring. She submitted, will I have to pay taxes on student loan forgiveness?
Sorry about that. I got a little dry.
No
So,
worries.
okay, thanks. So Jill, for student loan forgiveness, we want you to take a look at the publication 525. And it talks about taxable and non-taxable income. There are several exceptions that are regarding that, and it's going to list the information related to your student loan debt. So that's a response to that.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
So I'm going to jump ahead to a question we received from Silver Spring from S. They asked, I just resubmitted my 2020 amended tax return. How long can I expect to wait before receiving my refund?
Wendy, you want me to run with that?
Well, that's going to depend, but I think that the best way is to, the normal processing time for amended returns is 16 weeks, but sometimes depending on the IRS circumstances that may change. So the best way to do that is just to continue to use the IRS.gov tool, where's my amended return, because that will give you more information about the status of it.
Great. Great, thank you.
And- I'm
mhm.
sorry. And in addition, if there are any changes, they can take a look at the IRS operations status of mission critical functions, because that will give also any information, even amended or any payments or anything like that, original return status. So that will be a good resource for them.
Okay, great. So our last question of the day, and it's kind of on theme with a lot of the information that you guys touched upon today. We have a question from Joe in Rockville. They ask, what is the most often made mistake on submitted income tax returns from individuals?
Okay, so Joe, thanks for that. You can go on irs.gov. We have lots of refreshers for you, but just like Wendy and I stated, make sure you double check those figures, check your social security number. Sometimes the names are misspelled, might be a math mistake, but moreover, make sure you have the correct bank account information, routing numbers, and all that information, just to name a few. But as in all things, you go right on irs.gov and there's an entire listing. But when we say check, double check, and check again, because we don't want to delay your refund. So thanks for that question.
Thank you, Veronica. So I just want to wrap up today's event. Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you, Veronica, for taking the time to talk to our constituents today. And I just want to thank the attendees as well for taking the time to attend today's event, and hopefully you learned and gained a lot of information. I just want to reiterate that if you have a pending or outstanding issue with the IRS or a tax issue that you're currently dealing with, if you are a resident or a constituent of Maryland District 8, please feel free to reach out to our office. Our phone number is 301-354-1000. You can also go to raskin.house.gov and fill out a constituent service request form. And we'll see if we can connect you with the right people at TAS to help you resolve that problem. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great day.